Hey guys, welcome back. And in this episode of Doc's Boost, we're going to talk all about drive shaft angles, and give you a lot of examples and demonstrations on how to get that done. We're going to talk about two-piece, we're going to talk about one-piece, we're going to talk about two-piece with regular U-joints, and we're going to talk about two-piece, especially in the Mustangs. We have two constant velocity joints in that second section. We're going to talk about all of that. And in order to do that job, you just need a handful of tools. And I can't tell you exactly what you're going to need for the type of car you're going to be working on. Besides all the hand tools that you're going to need, you're also going to need a digital angle finder. And the digital angle finder is the way to go. Don't even try to play with those analog ones. They're ridiculous. I'll put a link below about the one that I found and the one that I bought and used. It worked great. Before we get started with anything else, please click the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell to set the notifications for all the content coming your way. I really appreciate it, and thanks for the support. This video is going to cover a lot of ground, and I'm not going to make you watch everything. I have included a points of interest chart so you can watch the sections you need. But I won't stop you if you want to watch the whole enchilada. Before I show you the points of interest and their locations in the video, we need to talk about slope. An important theme described in all sections is the fact that the slope of the output shaft of the transmission and the slope of the pinion shaft must be parallel. I'll explain that in detail. And I know there'll be plenty of questions, so please don't hesitate to ask any and all questions in the comment section in YouTube so I can answer them. And I'll do my very best to answer each and every question. Here's the points of interest list for this video. Each topic is very important to get the job done correctly so you can get the smooth ride you deserve no matter the driveline setup under your car. The first thing on the list is a must for everyone. The car has to be at ride height in order to do the measuring and adjusting. You cannot let the suspension sag and expect to get it right. That'll never happen. I built some cribbing blocks to get my car 12 inches off the ground. Cribbing is defined as a wooden structure designed to support heavy objects. This is what my cribbing looks like, and it works great. It allows me to quickly get under the car, check engine angles, and make necessary adjustments while keeping the car at ride height. You cannot do the job at home without cribbing. If you have a vehicle with a two-piece drive shaft with standard cross-type U-joints, location 2 is where you want to start. I cover everything you need to know and show you how to do it. If you want to know how to use the Spicer angle calculator after taking all your angles to make sure you have to do anything, location 3 is where you want to go. I cover both one and two-piece shafts. If you have a Mustang with a two-piece shaft with constant velocity joints on that second shaft, locations 4 and 5 are the places for you. I take measurements, I tell you why they work the way they do, and show you what to do to make changes if necessary. If you want to know how to make adjustments on pinion angles for leaf spring applications or Mustang control arm applications or anything in between, location 6 is the place for you. If you're replacing a two-piece shaft with a one-piece shaft, then location 7 is all you need. Go there now. Then I provide a very short summary before closing. Before we start, remember, if you change your ride height more than 2 inches, you need to check your angles and make any necessary adjustments to keep your ride smooth and vibration free. Two-piece drive angles first. I'm going to show you where to take the angles and then go to spicer.com to check and see if you have to do anything. To start the conversation off, you have to understand we're talking about drive angles on a two-piece shaft. And all of the drive angles, now, you know, I'm not an artist, and these components, you know, they, at least you can tell what they are, right? So all of these angles are taken from the same side of the car. So if you're going to take your angles from the driver's side of the car, then all of the angles that you take, all of the samples that you take, should be done from the driver's side of the car, from front to back, and all components. If you mix them up, it'll throw you off and you'll get frustrated and things just won't work right for you. So make sure you do them, all the angles from the same side of the car. And everything that you're doing is from front to back. Front of the car to the back of the car. Pretty much all cars, all the time, will always have a downward slope, a negative slope. That's what you're dealing with. And that negative slope will be seen in every component. And every component, keep in mind, is a front to back measurement. So I'm just going to put these up there just to remind you to keep that in mind. And this area right here at the differential, that's the area where a lot of people get confused because they get under there and it looks like the pinion angle is facing up, and it's really not. It's a forward to back negative slope. Remember that, forward to back negative slope. So even though the pinion angle looks like it's sticking up, it's actually a negative slope. All right, so keep that in mind. Negative slope. Front. Yeah, right. Front to back. All right. Let's get back up here and now start to take measurements. The first thing we're going to do, as we talk about these measurements and the angles that are important, our goal is to take the measurements, go to spicer.com, and plug them in to see if we have to do anything. So the measurement for your engine and transmission assembly, remember that crankshaft and the output shaft of the transmission is all one piece. Those shafts slide one into the other, so it's all the same angle. And that angle can be taken at a flat edge along this machined surface, so you can put your angle finder there. Or if you can get access to your harmonic balancer, you can put the angle finder there. I would prefer that you disconnect this connection and disconnect this connection and let these two pieces hang and place your angle finder here for that angle and place your angle finder here for that angle. Here's what you're going to get. Almost all manufacturers out there are going to be somewhere in the -3 degree range, plus or minus a 0.5 degrees. So for our example, let's say that we took a -2.7 degree reading from any one of those three locations. The first shaft of a two-piece drive shaft needs to be considered as an extension of the output shaft of the transmission. That shaft right there is an extension of output shaft of trans. So that means whatever angle you get here, you should get the same angle here. Your goal is to get -2.7 plus or minus a half a degree. I would recommend, strongly recommend, that you go for the plus or minus 5 degrees. Either make it a half a degree less or a half a degree more, because you need an angle on the U-joint in order for that U-joint to get lubricated. So the grease in the U-joint cap can rotate on that U-joint as it spins around to keep it lubricated. Go for the plus or minus 5 degrees. Take your reading on the shaft, anywhere on the shaft. The next reading, anywhere on the shaft. Take your reading. And let's say we record that reading as a negative 3.5 degrees. And then we go here and we place our angle finder on the flange, because remember, it's a lot easier to do that. So just unbolt it and let it hang down there and take your reading there. That's the best place to do it. I highly recommend you do that. And if we get a 2.7 degree down reading, this measurement matching this measurement is the ultimate goal. When these conditions exist, the 2.7 here, the 2.7 plus or minus here, and the negative 2.7 here, what happens is the drive angles that you're concerned about is this angle here and this angle here. When you have matched the drive angle from here to here, negative 2.7 degrees plus or minus 0.5 degrees, with that negative 2.7 degrees, these drive angles will match. These drive angles have to match within a half a degree, so they cancel each other out. There's a great video out there, and I'll put a link to that video that you can watch someone actually demonstrate the value of those angles being equal so they cancel each other out. You need to watch that video. So let's slide under my car for an example of how to make all of those changes happen. After that, we'll visit Spicer.com to take a look at the angle calculator. The first measurement we're taking is the angle of the crankshaft and the output shaft, everything from end to end, from the front of the crankshaft to the output shaft of the transmission is 2.7 degrees negative, which means that angle should be 2.7 degrees negative. And it reads 4.9, and it should read 2.7. So our goal is to make that number on that shaft be the same as what we measured on the engine block at a flat surface. We're going to do that by taking these bolts out and shimming spacers underneath this bracket, and then take some measurements along the way. So the 13 millimeter socket, pulling is always better than pushing.
It's always easier.
So what we got on the back side of this bracket is a big old thick washer like this. And we're going to put some thinner washers in there. What we have is some washers, and so 4 of them are pretty much the same length. So we're going to, I don't know how big of a change that's going to be. So we're going to put 2 washers in there first on both sides, tighten it up, and take another measurement, and we're going to keep doing that until we get it right. I'm happy with that. And it even looks straighter now. So we're at 1.2.
This is 2.4.
And that's it. That's within a half a degree, right?
Yeah.
So we made it. We got camera going on?
Yeah.
All right, so there it is. 2.5. Can't ask for better than that. We're done. We just need to tighten this up and get out from under the car and take it for a test drive. So let's go. Let's get out of here. Feels pretty smooth. Well, that feels pretty good. Feels vibration free, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I think we had success in changing the pinion angle on this car. Moved it back up in specs, made it parallel with the engine at 2.5 degrees, plus or minus a half a degree or so, right?
Right.
I'm happy with it. We're here at Spicer.com and I'm going to show you how to use the tool. Once you arrive, you have to pick the number of shafts that you have, and we're dealing with 2 shafts, so we're going to make that 2. The next thing, you can see hide diagrams, show diagrams. When you arrive, it'll probably look like this. So after you pick the number of shafts, you might want to show diagrams. Showing diagrams gives you a pictorial view of the part or component that you're actually entering the measurement for. And sometimes that really helps. Another thing you want to make sure is that all of the slopes are downward. So if you find them in an upward slope space, you want to make sure that they're all going down. You might as well do that right off the bat, all down, because they're all downward slopes in your drive line for your car. So the next thing that we're going to do here is start plugging in the values. And we had a 2.7 at the engine and at the output of the transmission. You can see a picture of the transmission there. So we're going to put a 2.7. And then we had a 2.7 on that first component for the 2-piece drive shaft. And you can see that that coupling shaft is what they're calling it. And we also had a 2.7. Let's change that. Let's say we went for the plus or minus 0.5 degrees and we added a 0.5 degrees. So that would be a 3.2. Oops, that's way too much. Let's go to 3.2. And for the second part of the drive shaft, we measured a 3.5. And then in the driven member, the driven member being the pinion, and now we're going to put in the angle we got down there, and that was a 2.7 as well. And they're all downward slopes, so then calculate. Bam! And here are the results of the calculation. When you're within 0.05 degrees of each other, then you're golden. Now, since we're here, let's talk about one-piece drive shafts. Since we're going to be talking about them later in the video anyway, we won't have to come back to the drive angle calculator. We'll just select one shaft. We'll zero all of these numbers out. Let's say that we take an angle of 2.7 here, and that would be from the drive member itself, or the output shaft of the transmission, measured 2.7. Downward slope, or a negative number, right? And then we put our angle finder on our single piece drive shaft, and that read, we're going to say 3.5. Again, a downward slope, always a downward slope. And then we read at the pinion flange, we got a 2.7. All downward slopes. Calculate the ring, and look at that. We got exactly even Steven operating angles, and they're going to cancel each other out for a perfect ride. In essence, you have a pinion angle that is parallel with the engine angle, and there's no way in hell the operating angles can be wrong if you have those two angles parallel. Hey, now that we've spent all that time talking about two-piece drive shafts in regular U-joints, we're going to toss all of that aside for a while and talk about Mustang two-piece drive shafts and the fact that they have two constant velocity joints in that second section of the shaft. And that changes everything, changes it dramatically. Before we talk about those changes and why they work the way they work, we're going to slide under a Mustang and we're going to take some measurements of an untouched car. standard ride height right out of the factory and take all the measurements, and then we're going to plug them in and talk about why they work the way they do. And then apply it to what you need to be concerned with if you change the drive height on your Mustang with a two-piece drive shaft with two constant velocity joints in them. So let's get under the car and take some measurements. All right, the first angle we're going to check out is going to be the angle all the way to the output shaft of the transmission. We have an angle of 2.5, a downward slope of 2.5. Now we're going to take this and we are going to measure the angle of the first component shaft, and that angle is 5 degrees. Downward slope 5 degrees. And now we're going to take the slope of that drive shaft, and that's 3.8 down.
Yep, 3.8.
3.8 degrees down. So that angle is sitting at 2.3. Now that we've got out from under the car with some measurements, we're going to plug them into this diagram and we're going to talk about why they work, because they don't fit the pattern that I just got done talking about with standard universal joints and a two-piece shaft. First, we'll plug in the angles. What we got here from measuring at this point right here, we got a negative 2.5 degrees. Measuring here, we got a negative 5.0 degrees. Then measuring here, we got a 3.8, negative of course. And we measured here for a negative 2.4. All downward slope, front to back, just like before. We didn't change anything so far. The only thing that changed was the angles and the relationship between those angles, and the fact that we had a giant downward slope, a negative slope, and we wonder why all of these angles are so different, and it works. Why is this angle so much bigger than that angle? Well, constant velocity joints changes everything. We've got a constant velocity joint there and a constant velocity joint here, and the critical nature of drive angles suddenly changes. We no longer have to be so critical at those points, because instead of a standard U-joint following an elliptical pattern as it rotates, and we need canceling drive angles to make it smooth, constant velocity joints don't run elliptically. They run smoothly in the same circle, and they don't slow down and start up. And that's why Mustangs, or any other brand of car as well, using constant velocity joints in a two-piece shaft. You'll have a constant velocity joint in that position and a constant velocity joint in that position, making this angle and that angle no longer critical. Here's what they're doing. The negative 2.5 degrees negative slope for the engine and output shaft of the transmission is standard. That's industry. Pretty much any manufacturer is going to have that, plus or minus 5 degrees, just like we talked before. That's what you're going to get. They went to a negative 5 degree downward slope to make sure that U-joint right there, which is a standard U-joint, to make sure it gets lubricated. And there's no offsetting angle related to it. So it doesn't matter what that angle is because of the constant velocity joints. So we're good. We're golden. Ford made sure that the pinion angle is riding parallel with the output shaft of the engine and transmission. We have two lines. One is the engine line and one is the pinion angle line. So we have pinion and engine. I'll call it engine, but we know that it's engine and output of the trans, running at a negative 2.5 and a negative 2.4. That is pretty much parallel. And making sure that those two run parallel is all that matters. Drive angles are no longer critical, and we don't have to take them into consideration. If you change the height of your Mustang more than 2 inches, chances are you're going to have to adjust the pinion angle to match the engine angle once again. So from here, We're going to slide under my car with a 2-piece, and we're going to check the angle of the engine and compare it with the angle of the differential and make the adjustment at the differential to make sure they match. We're going to show you how to do that. Angle of the crankshaft and the output shaft is 2.7 degrees negative. 1.8. Looks like we got to go a whole degree down.
What's moving?
So there it is, 2.5. Can't ask for better than that. We're done. We just need to tighten this up and get out from under the car and take it for a test drive. Well, I can't just turn you loose without explaining how to adjust these things, right? And some cars with those regular U-joints are going to have leaf spring rear ends. How do you adjust the pinion angle on a leaf spring rear end? Well, let me tell you. It's not an easy job, but it can be done, and they do make shims like this one that you have to purchase. If you need to make an angle change of 1 degree, you buy that shim. If it's a 2 degree change, you need to buy a 2 degree shim, so on and so forth. 3 degree, 4 degree, whatever you need to do. And you slide that shim here between the leaf spring by loosening up the U-bolts and then driving that wedge in there. And you're either going to drive it from this side or you're going to drive it in from that side, depending on whether you need to go up or down. That's how you adjust a leaf spring rear end. Now that you know how to do leaf spring suspension changes, what about a Mustang and Mustang control arm suspensions? We don't have leaf springs. We've got control arms. What you're going to have to do is buy an adjustable control arm and replace the control arms that you have. Now, you can buy 2 lower control arms that are adjustable, or you can buy 1 upper or both. Some Mustangs have 2 uppers and 2 lowers. However you want to do this, however many adjustable control arms you want to buy, you can buy them all for all I care. You only need to adjust at the upper or the lower. Unless you've dramatically changed the ride height, then you might need both, and even more than that. But we're not going to go that far into this, all right? So either a pair of uppers or a single upper or a pair of lowers can do the job for you. And it's just a simple matter of adjusting it to make this longer. And if you make that longer, the pinion will go up. If you make it shorter, then the pinion will go down. If you screw these out longer, then that would make the pinion go down. And if you screwed them in closer, made that control arm shorter, then the pinion will go up. It's pretty darn simple with a Mustang and control arms once you buy those control arms and get them installed. Now we've arrived at the 1-piece drive shaft. So all you Mustang enthusiasts and others out there that want to take their 2-piece off and put a 1-piece in its place, this is for you. This is what you've been waiting for. The first thing I want you to do is to take the drive shaft off the car. I'm going to show you the best place to take those angle measurements to determine whether or not you have to make any changes on your pinion angle. The goal is to make sure that the pinion angle is the same as the output shaft of the transmission. Both positions should be exactly the same, or within a half a degree of each other. So after you remove the drive shaft, you're going to place your angle finder here. Really convenient place to do it. You're going to take that reading. It will be somewhere in the neighborhood of a negative 2.5 degrees. Then you're going to take that angle finder and you're going to put it right here and check that angle. And optimally, you want that to be a negative 2.5 degrees. You have a plus or minus 0.5 degree variation between those 2 points. Go for the gusto and get it exactly on the money. Once you got those 2 angles matching, or in other words, parallel with one another, the engine line, negative 2.5 degrees, and the pinion line is negative 2.5 degrees. When you attach a drive shaft to those 2 points, this angle and this angle will automatically be equal. They have to be equal, and they will cancel each other out, and you'll get a smooth ride. It's mathematically impossible to be any other thing. So that's why I want you to pull the shaft off, take the measurements, make whatever appropriate adjustments necessary on the pinion to get a negative 2.5. And remember, it's a front to back negative slope you're after. Don't get tricked into believing just because that pinion is pointing upward, it's positive, because that's not the case. It can fool you. Keep that in mind. We're looking for a negative slope. Make a match. Make that number equal that number, and you'll be golden. Connect the drive shaft, and you'll be smooth as glass. That's it. That's all you needed to do. I've already covered how to make those adjustments if necessary, whether you have leaf springs or control arms. No problem. Everything easy peasy. Now I'm going to install a one-piece drive shaft on my cars, and I already have the two-piece drive shaft out of the way. So we're going to slide under, take 2 measurements, make any adjustments necessary, and attach the drive shaft, and we're done. So let's go slide under the car now.
Don't forget we're not at ride height because of the wheel.
Oh, yeah. Put it down. No wonder it's all whacked out. Go ahead and sit down in the car. Shift your ass around a little bit. Alright. 2.6 down, right on the pinion flange. 3.0 down. So we try to get as close to 3 degrees down there as we can. Got 3 degrees up front. We're going to get 3 degrees back here, and then we will be good. We're in great shape. We'll go down here and take a last look, and the output shaft still unmoved. We got 3.0 up here. We are good to go. All we got to do now is put the drive shaft in place, and our drive angles are going to be perfect. They don't have a choice but to be perfect, because we have 2 parallel surfaces, and we're just going to connect the 2. So the drive angles on each end, in the front and the back, are going to cancel out perfectly. All right, so here's the summarization, the quickest summary in the history of time. All you have to do is you get under the car and you make sure that the engine angle and the pinion angle are parallel with one another. If you can do that, everything else will fall in place. Well, we got under the car and we made both the engine angle and the pinion angle both a negative 3 degrees downward slope. And I'm telling you right now that when you take off, it is vibration free, and it has never been that smooth ever. Backing down off of a pretty hefty miles per hour there, feeling real good, and I'm real happy with the outcome. Negative 3 degrees, negative 3 degrees. put a drive shaft in there, and those operating angles have to be correct, have to be canceling each other, and we just proved it. So if you haven't subscribed to Doc's Boost, now is the time to do it. Make sure you click the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell to set your notifications for all the content coming your way. Well, that's all I got for you in this episode of Doc's Boost. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.